Good evening. First, I have some announcements. Please make sure while we're settling in that your cell phones, including mine, which I'm pretty sure I haven't done, is on silent or mute. Let's all do that quick. To keep a neutral and nonpartisan atmosphere, the candidates agreed to our policy that no literature, clothing, or other material associated with the candidate's campaign is permitted in the room. The forum is also being streamed live to the league, the sponsor, and the candidates have agreed to use the recording from beginning to end with no editing in compliance with FCC rules. Unauthorized videos such as cell phone videos are also not allowed because the FCC requires that a forum recording must be presented in its entirety. My name is Margie Gator, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of North and Central San Mateo County. I'd like to thank the City of San Mateo and its City Clerk, Martin McTaggart, for sponsoring this forum tonight. We appreciate their interest and efforts in presenting events that increase voters' knowledge about the candidates and issues. The League of Women Voters is a national nonpartisan organization. We welcome people of all ages. Our education mission is to encourage your active and informed participation in government at every level. The League does not endorse or oppose candidates or political parties. Our sole interest is in helping voters gain fair and unbiased information to make an informed decision on or before Election Day. The purpose of the candidate forum is to provide an opportunity for all the candidates to be heard at one time and to be questioned by you, the voters. Bringing candidates and voters together face to face enables voters to be better informed about their election decisions. So thanks for coming out and being on Zoom to learn more about the candidates and asking them questions. Tonight, you will hear from the candidates for the San Mateo City Council. San Mateo now has district elections. This means candidates are elected by district instead of an at-large election. There are 2 candidates for 1 seat in District 2, and there's 1 candidate for 1 seat in District 4. The term of office for all the districts is 4 years. This event provides a nonpartisan setting for the voters to hear the candidates for the 2 districts in play in this election cycle. You may ask a question that is pertinent to your district, but we will have all the candidates answer the question. After all, if elected, they will be working as one governing body. To maintain a nonpartisan atmosphere, supporters or opponents of any candidate in the audience should not demonstrate their preferences for that candidate, either through questions or responses. And then just hold your applause until the end of the forum, and we will thank all of the candidates. The candidates, by district and alphabetical order, are Danielle Spirko Goditsky, Nicole Fernandez, and Charles Hanson. The rules for the forum are as follows. We'll start with opening statements. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. Then we'll have the question period, and during the question period, each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. All candidates will have equal time to speak to the question, even if the question is addressed to only one candidate. And then we'll end with closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. Our timekeeper is Afsoon Shadar. She will hold up some warning signs when the candidate has 1 minute, then 30 seconds left in the allotted time for speaking. At the end of the time, the timekeeper will hold up the stop sign until the candidate stops speaking. And you can finish your sentence, just don't go on for a paragraph. Our ushers tonight are Cynthia Robbins-Roth and Betsy Pace. Just raise your hand if you need a question card or have one ready for one of them to pick up. We can always use more questions as the forum unfolds. The conversation may spark more questions. For those of you who are viewing this forum on Zoom, you can submit questions still to questions@lwvncsmc.org. That email alias is on the event page where you got the Zoom link, in case it's not clear from what I said. All questions come to the moderator. I'll sort the questions by subject so that we make sure we cover a variety of topics. We often don't have time to ask all the questions, and I might rephrase or combine questions at times. So with all that, it's time for opening statements. The candidates have drawn lots to determine the order in which they will speak. Each candidate has 3 minutes for the opening statement, and our first candidate is Charles Hanson.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. My name is Charles Hanson, and I'm proud to call District 2 my home. My wife, Fabienne, and my son, Trip, we chose to raise our son, Trip, in District 2 because of the rich history and strong sense of community that define the district. I've spent over 2 decades in nonprofit executive leadership, building and leading multi-million-dollar projects across the country, and today, I am honored to work as the Chief Program Officer at Peninsula Family Service. At Peninsula Family Service, I oversee 45 essential programs that provide critical support from affordable subsidized childcare to financial empowerment and older adult services. But my commitment to community goes beyond my professional role. I've always believed in the power of service and the importance of uplifting underrepresented voices. I've served on the San Mateo County Civil Service Commission, ensuring that our hiring and employment practices are fair and transparent. I'm on the San Mateo Union High School District's Equity Advisory Committee, where I've advocated for equity and resources for all the students. And currently I'm the president of the Black Parents Association, and I work to amplify those voices that are often looked in leadership roles. I'm also a Caution Fellow, and I'm currently working with 10 other fellows to bring $300,000 in funding to North Central San Mateo to address some inequalities and invest in the future of our neighborhoods. What motivates me most is the strength and resilience of our community and how committed we are to building a better future for our families. The campaign that I'm running is about harnessing the spirit and unity to tackle the issues that are most important to the residents and ensuring a safe and sustainable infrastructure, creating affordable housing, and promoting public safety that works for everyone. But we're not just here to maintain the status quo through probability politics. We're embracing possibility politics, where we dream big and we fight for what we can be, not just what is. It's about believing in the future where every person, regardless of background, has the opportunity to succeed. We're taking bold strides to ensure that San Mateo's government reflects the diversity, hopes, and needs of all its residents. Together, we can make this vision a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next opening statement is Danielle Swierko-Goditsky.
Thank you. So I'm Danielle Swierko-Goditsky. I'm a lifelong San Matean, born and raised in the city. Until the age of 5 years old, I lived in the village. And then at about 5.5, my parents bought a home in Shoreview, where I've lived ever since on the east side of 101. And I'm very excited to be running unopposed to be one of the first female representatives from the east side of the freeway and from San Mateo. So I think most people know me through my advocacy and work on flood-free San Mateo, where I organized roughly 200 residents to come to City Hall and petition our city government for $3.1 million in stormwater infrastructure relief funds after the flooding in 2022. And then when I partnered with our city council and fellow neighborhood associations on the community flood and stormwater infrastructure measure, securing roughly $4.1 million for the city to continue our efforts on stormwater prevention and infrastructure for the future. And as we saw last night with Milton, climate resilient infrastructure is a key priority for the future. In terms of, the areas that I'm invested in is really bringing a voice to the residents of District 4, crime, public safety, again, infrastructure, and then community-centered development, and ensuring that, there is a place for everyone in our community and that our economy continues to be vibrant. So thank you. That's a little bit about me.
Thank you. And our final opening statement is Nicole Fernandez.
Hi there, I'm Nicole Fernandez, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters and everybody for joining us today. I'm really grateful. There are other places you could be on a Thursday, but you chose to be here. So again, my name is Nicole Fernandez, and I am running with Dr. Hanson to potentially become the District 2 representative, which is made up of North Central, North Shoreview, and the downtown. I am a product of San Mateo County. My story is a San Mateo and a San Mateo County story. I'm the proud oldest daughter of immigrants who came here the year before I was born, and they actually chose to rent their first home. My parents and grandparents, we were a multi-generational family before it was cool, actually on Grant Street in North Central. I was raised in Belmont and graduated from Calmont High School. I'm a career-long public servant. I've worked for 3 members of the California State Legislature that have served San Mateo or San Mateo County in some capacity. My current day job is I am the district director for Senator Josh Becker, who represents this area in the California State Senate. So government is I know government very well. When I purchased my first home, I chose to go back to where my family landed when they first reached these shores. And I chose to purchase my home after saving for many years in North Central. It's a vibrant and beautiful and diverse community. I'm a two-term Community Relations Commission member, 2 times as chair. And I also serve on the board of directors of Samaritan House. And so I have a keen understanding of government, budgeting, and the diversity of our community. I've lived in North Central for 12 years, although I have lived in San Mateo County all my life. My key priorities are traffic safety and infrastructure, preserving affordable housing and building housing at all levels, and then improving our public safety. San Mateo is an amazing community to live in. I've lived here for 12 beautiful years, and it's cosmopolitan, it's diverse, it's walkable, and it is an amazing city to not only grow up in, but also an amazing city to grow older in. I want San Mateo to have the first-class city council and city services it deserves, and I'm committed to working towards that goal.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the question period. If you haven't written your question, or if you think of another one, raise your hand so the ushers can bring you a card or pick up your question. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question, and I will vary the order in which the candidates are called on to speak. And I have my little preloaded grid that determined that order already. So here we go. The first question is, can you tell us what your position is on Measure T and explain your reasoning? Can you tell us what your position is on Measure T and explain your reasoning? And first is Danielle Swierko-Godecki.
So I support Measure T. The way I think about Measure T and what I'd encourage you to do is think about, you have 2 options, a red pill and a blue pill, similar to the Matrix. If you support Measure T, what you're saying is that you support adding low to medium income growth across San Mateo in transit-oriented corridors for roughly 20% of the city. We need to do this because we have state mandated housing. We have to add 7,000 units of housing. If we don't do this, then we run the risk of being subject to builder's remedy, having to rezone neighborhoods, and we'll have to add 1,700 units of housing additional, so roughly 9,000 total across our community. So I encourage everybody to think about the facts and to vote yes on Measure T. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Charles Hanson.
I also support Measure T. Housing affordability is one of the backbones of our city's future, and too many of our longtime residents are being priced out. And Measure T gives us the opportunity to keep the choice at the local level where we have control. When I think about Measure T and affordable housing and building more units, I liken it to taxes. The last thing you want is to be audited. And if we don't bring in enough units, as Danielle was mentioning, then the state comes in and mandates not only where we build, but how we build. And we don't want that. So I'm in strong favor of Measure T.
Thank you. And finally, Nicole Fernandez.
Like my colleagues, I am also in favor of Measure T, fully acknowledging the fact that this is a very divisive issue in our community. I'm born and raised here in San Mateo County. I've seen how it has changed and progressed in many ways, some better and some worse. And, this is my home. My parents live on the other side of town in Laurie Meadows, and their retirement is wrapped up in their home that they live in Laurie Meadows. So it can be scary to see these new units being built, but I think it's really important to have a choice in where it is built so that we can maintain the character of the neighborhoods. I work for the state legislature. I've seen people's housing elements revoked so that they don't have power. Or I've seen builders remedy projects proposed in different cities up and down the peninsula. And we really need to take control where we can take control, and Measure T is a way that we can maintain local control here in San Mateo.
Thank you. We'll stay in the housing themes for another question. What other steps should San Mateo take to build up the housing stock in an efficient and equitable way? Others have talked about high rents due to, not enough housing supply. So what other steps can San Mateo do to build up the housing stock in an efficient and equitable way? And first is Charles Hanson.
I think a couple of things we can do is we can streamline the development process and hold developers accountable for including affordable units in the new projects, and most importantly, protect current residents from displacement. I believe in housing that reflects, as I mentioned, the heart of the community. So ensuring that our current residents, our families are not being priced out due to increased pricing is by increasing the affordable units. And I think that starts with streamlining the process and holding developers accountable for those units. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Nicole Fernandez.
I believe that the key to meeting our affordable housing needs is going to be in line with Measure T, which is building smaller, denser units in our downtown and on our transit corridor where it can be accommodated. In order for developers to build affordable housing, it has to pencil out. And affordable housing, given the economic situation that we have right now and the amount of private money that used to be available and is not available, means that we really have to build both market rate and affordable units. You can't really have one without the other. And so we really have to focus on building taller, denser, and more housing at all levels, because that's how we're going to get what we need for our new neighbors who may not be able to pay the market rate rents.
Thank you. And finally, Danielle Sverko-Kodzitsky.
Yeah, just to add on to those wonderful answers, I'd like to look more closely at the way that the city is actually operating. I think there's opportunity for us to explore things like ministerial approvals. So right now, we have commissions that help advise the city council on process. I definitely think there's an opportunity for us to look at ways to streamline the process. It actually also cuts down cost. And given that we'll be in a budget deficit next year, upwards of 10 million plus, I think that's one of the ways that we could explore, expediting housing and making things more equitable across the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Since with just 3 candidates, we'll get through a lot of questions, I'm going to do one more on housing, at least for now. Some of the current Proposition T opposition state that our city has a certified state approval housing plan with Prop Y. Is this true or false? Some of the current anti-T proposition opposition state that our city has certified state approved housing plan with Prop Y. Is this true or not? And we start with Nicole Fernandez.
So we have approval pending the fact that we build the 5,000 units that we are promised the state and meet our RHNA allocation. If we don't actually zone to build it and have an actual feasible way to build those units, then they can revoke our housing element approval like they've done in Portola Valley. Portola Valley no longer did receive approval, and then it was revoked because they didn't submit their plan in good faith, and so it was ultimately revoked. And so I believe that we do really Measure Y only allows us to build in choice areas of the city. And I think that Measure T would allow us to build in choice portions of the city, 10 opportunity areas. And I think it's completely feasible for us to do that. Y would still continue to be on the books.
Thank you. Next is Danielle.
Just to echo what Nicole said, so the housing division of the state made it conditional that we were certified, with us exploring ways to amend Measure Y. So if we don't do that, as Nicole mentioned, we run the risk of being decertified, which then exposes us to builder's remedy. And so and in addition to that, as I mentioned before, we'll be in a budget deficit next year, upwards of 10 million plus, and there'll be a 50,000 per month fine. So we really need to think critically about what is best for the long-term state of the city and the future of the city and where we want our dollars and cents to go. And so once again, that's one of the reasons I support Measure T, is because, you know, I do think Measure Y was valuable at one point in time, and you know, we need to think about the future state of the city. So thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Charles.
So not much to add. I would say directly to the question, yes, to Measure Y. However, it's yes with the contingency that it is amended. And I think right now, as already stated, that Measure T does give us the amendment possibilities and looking into the future of building with control and through the corridor downtown, and not having to build into those neighborhoods, as I mentioned earlier, keeping the control at the city council level.
Thank you. Our next question is about the budget. Given that fiscal year 24-25 is already projected to incur an approximate $10.6 million loss before reserves are tapped into, how can this deficit be mitigated in subsequent years? Given that in fiscal year 24-25 is already projected to incur an approximate $10.6 million loss before reserves are tapped into, how can this deficit be mitigated in subsequent years? And we'll start with Danielle.
Yeah, thank you. So I've referenced this twice now, but we are headed into a budget deficit year next year. You know, I want to remain optimistic, but we are going to have to be pretty critical of where we're investing our dollars and cents, and we'll need to look at ways to be efficient and think about planning. And I think some of the examples is things like a generalized maintenance plan, again, ministerial approvals, ways to cut down cost without cutting heads. So, you know, this is a big deal for San Mateo, and we need to think critically about our investments for the future so we don't end up in this position for the future. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Charles.
So yes, that is a very large deficit, and I think next year, looking at ways to cut into that without cutting into programs and cutting into people is going to be absolutely crucial. I think one way to look at that is by subsidizing certain entities. For example, we have a lot of tech companies coming in, and it's been well documented that when tech companies come into certain communities, that they will outsource and fund for certain city employees, and that's just a way to cut into the deficit. But be that as it may, 10.6 is a very large deficit, and looking at that, there's going to be a lot of hard choices going forward in 2025, 26.
Thank you. The next question is on education. With the development of community schools in the city.
I didn't get to answer.
Oh, sorry. I do that once a forum.
Sorry, Margie.
No, please call me out. It's fine. It's right. I haven't checked you off.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Sure. Given that FY 24-25 is already projected to incur an approximate $10.6 million loss before reserves are tapped into, how can this deficit be mitigated in subsequent years?
It's a great question. And I think that it's really important that we enhance our private-public partnerships for the incoming, for when we're hitting our deficit, which I believe is actually more like 12 million at this point. I'm not sure if it's 10.5. I think the updated number is 12 at this point, according to the last council meeting. But that said, I do think that we really need to enhance our public-private partnerships. For example, in Menlo Park, Meta, which is based in Menlo Park, pays for 2 to 3 public safety full-time positions. And I think that there's a lot more we can be maximizing in community benefits when it comes to our nonprofits and our private partners. I also believe that we're going to have to do some contracting of our services. And we're also going to have to work harder to obtain county, state, and federal money. And I have relationships with all of those folks and have advocated for those funds before and know how that works. And I'm really excited to try to bring those skills to the city council should we need it, and work with staff on that as well.
Okay, thank you. And my apologies. Education. With the development of community schools in the city, how can the city work with the school districts to help identify neighborhood needs? With the development of community schools in the city, how can the city work with the school district to help identify neighborhood needs? And we'll start with Charles.
So if I understand the question correctly, would you do me a favor and repeat it one more time? I'm sorry.
With the development of community schools in the city, how can the city work with the school district to help identify neighborhood needs?
Again, if I'm understanding the question correctly, I think that actually it's not just partnering with the school district. I think that's listening to the community as well. The community knows the needs probably more so than the school district. Yes, the school district will know education-wise what it needs. But as far as what the community itself needs, I think by hosting forums that include, yes, like city council members, the school district, and the community, I think that's a way to build cohesive school community partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Nicole.
So this is already being executed in a way because San Mateo Foster City School District is engaging the community and local elected officials on their workforce housing plan. They would like to develop workforce housing to serve the teachers that already work there because they're having a hard time keeping staff in the area because rents and mortgages are just so high. So they would be a really great control group to look at how they're doing that outreach. But that said, the city can certainly partner because we have some amazing nonprofits in our area and city services. We have a great communications team. We have a wonderful city clerk who does a lot of communication that can do outreach, but we also need to meet people where they are. We need to make sure that we're doing it in language. We're going to community events, both city sponsored and not city sponsored, partnering with our community centers, our PAL program, our churches, and making sure that we are assessing the needs of the community where people are at given their needs.
Thank you. And finally, Danielle.
So I am the neighborhood president for the Shoreview Parkside area, and I'm actually really proud of some of the initiatives we're doing around Lead Elementary in partnership with the city and different neighborhood activists and the school, especially around school safety measures. So making sure that our crosswalks, we have school crossing guard programs, that we have safety programs set up for after school and pick up and drop off, that kids feel safe biking or walking to school. So just to kind of be a little more specific, this is something I'm actively working on today and something I'm really committed, to investing in. And that's just one small example. I think several other were mentioned today about improving workforce housing, again, Measure T, and looking at different ways the city can partner and get grants back into schools as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Got it. We're going to talk about transportation for a few questions here. Is San Mateo's Safe Streets program working, and is it adequately funded? Is San Mateo's Safe Streets program working, and is it adequately funded? And we'll start with Nicole.
Is the San Mateo Safe Streets program working? I would say not, because District 2 has the most dangerous, is the most dangerous neighborhood. And it's not working for District 2, at least, because it is the most dangerous neighborhood for accidents with pedestrians and bicyclists. So it's not working. North Central is an equity priority area, and they've been working on the North Central streets plan for a number of years. North Shoreview has also had its own streets plan that's seen many iterations. I was concerned about the fact that we don't have a budget for bike lanes in San Mateo, a dedicated budget for bike lanes, and I think that is necessary, and I think that we do need to make that a priority funding function in the 25-26 year.
Thank you. Next is Danielle.
Yeah, so great question. I would have to agree. We've had a bike master plan and a transportation plan. The bike master plan was done in 2011. The transportation safety plan was done in 2014. It's since had to be updated twice. So, clearly, I think we've only done roughly 3% of the city in terms of transportation. We need more community outreach, more understanding where the deficits are, and we need to invest. You know, when I look at transportation, for example, for bike lanes or road construction, it's less than 500,000 per year. So that's just not adequate for the size and scale that the city is growing to be. So I'd love to see more investment here, and I'm committed to working on that. That being said, I know I'm going to run out of time, but I think we really need to lean into what the community wants and, you know, make sure that we're representing everyone's voice in the process. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Charles.
I would have to echo everyone's sentiment up here. As I walk and talk to the residents of District 2, it is a resounding no that it is working. We unfortunately even had a fatality last month because of how dangerous certain parts of the district are. I think centering the community's voice, especially in District 2, when we talk about the next iteration of bike lanes and bike paths, is going to be huge, because there's still a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths in District 2 of how we went about it the first time. And I think before we explore not only the funding but adding bike lanes, we do need to make sure that this go around in this iteration is centering the voice of the community.
Great, thank you. We can spend another minute on bike lanes because I have another question. While improvements are being made, safe bicycle, and pedestrian infrastructure is still sorely needed. Do you support protected bike lanes and improved pedestrian infrastructure along El Camino? And what parts of the city would you prioritize for improving bicycle and pedestrian safety and access? So do you support protected bike lanes and improved pedestrian infrastructure along El Camino? And what parts of the city would you prioritize for improving bicycle and pedestrian safety and access? And we'll start with Danielle.
So to your first two questions on support, yes. Infrastructure along El Camino and for pedestrians, yes. In terms of prioritization, you know, this is a very complex issue. I know the city uses specific modeling to determine what are the areas that, you know, they start with. It's also based on grant funding as well currently. But I think we need to look at streets, you know, where there's capacity to connect things. So for example, in Baywood, our streets are 46 feet across, which is the correct limit to add a bike lane. Perhaps we could explore connecting from Aragon and Baywood Elementary along Alameda down Parrott Drive, for example, down to the downtown. So that would be one example of where we could get creative and actually make things fit to have a connected community.
Thank you. Next is Charles.
So support, to the first part of your question, support, yes. And as I was alluding to earlier, I think additional bike paths for safety purposes are absolutely needed. However, I think before we explore that, the priority for me would be District 2 and looking at the bike path on Humboldt, just because that is mostly what I hear when I am out canvassing. There are several community members, as I mentioned, who don't feel that they were heard, and how that went down. And I think before we explore specifically in District 2 adding more bike paths, we need to look at restoring some of the parking that was lost in our last bike path plan. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Nicole Fernandez.
Thank you, Margie. Great question. So with regards to El Camino, I think that it's important to note that El Camino is a state highway. And so if bike paths or any modifications are going to take place on El Camino at all, it needs to be done in partnership with Caltrans, which maintains that road. And so we can work in partnership with them, but we can't tell them what to do. But in my day job, I do work for a member of the California State Legislature, so I would have a keen front seat to anything that would be happening on putting bike lanes in on El Camino. For me, priority for any immediate funds that we have that need to be spent on infrastructure and pedestrian safety would be on Peninsula near in District 2, because I think that we've had a number of accidents and again, the pedestrian fatality of Yolanda Villar last month. And if I were elected to District 2, I would actually create a task force with the council member who represents the other side of Peninsula in Burlingame to set up a task force to work on how we can improve those infrastructure and make it that infrastructure and make it safer. With regards to bike lanes in general, I will stop.
Thank you. And I told the candidates this, but just so it's clear, all the questions that I'm asking are coming from the public. They are not my questions, just to be clear and transparent. So another about transport. How did you transport yourself to this forum tonight? And what would it take for you to seriously consider an alternate mode of transport? How did you transport yourself to the forum tonight? And what would it take for you to seriously consider an alternate mode of transportation? And first is Charles Hanson.
So I did drive here it would depend on where I'm going. I wouldn't mind. I walk to work. I'm fortunate enough where I work 3 blocks from where I live, so I walk. I would love to say I would like to bike, but I'm not really built for bicycles. So it just depends on how far I'm having to go. It just depends on how far I'm having to go. It wouldn't take too much because I already am using, different modes of transportation. It just depends on exactly where my destination is.
Thank you. And Nicole Fernandez.
I drove tonight, but I will tell you that in the last few years, I have made an effort to use more alternative transportation. I am very lucky that I live where I live in North Central. The 292 stops just a block away from my house, so I get to take that to the airport, and I don't have to worry about getting an Uber or driving myself or having a family member drive me. What would make it easier is having a more coordinated public transit system. It's so hard to get around these days. And I was really proud to work with my boss, Senator Becker, on the seamless transit bill, which he sponsored a few years ago, which would have required timing and pay methods for the different transit agencies all along in the Bay Area. And if we could get something cohesive like that, I think more people would be willing to use public transportation because you wouldn't have to change the Clipper card. You wouldn't have to change, you wouldn't have to think about what times because all of it would be synced in together. So if we could sync those up, I think it would be better for the Bay Area.
Thank you. And finally, Danielle Sverko-Godzicki.
I too drove tonight. However, I recently started a job in the city of San Mateo, and I do walk to work when I do go into the office. I want to echo everything that was mentioned up here. I'd also add that, again, this goes back not just to coordinated transportation modes or different modes of transportation, but also making sure that our infrastructure is well positioned and accessible for everybody. So, for example, our seniors, they need to have good, clear sidewalks to walk on or to wheel their wheelchairs on, or, if you're, handicapped, being able to access a sidewalk or roadway, all of that matters and feeds into transportation overall for everybody.
Thank you. The complete east, this is like a city quality of life type of question. The complete east side of the block between 2nd and 3rd, El Dorado and Fremont has been abandoned, leaving the neighborhood with a huge hole on one end and a pile of dirt on the other. What should be done to resolve this significant blight in the city? The complete east side of the block between 2nd and 3rd, El Dorado, and Fremont has been abandoned, leaving the neighborhood with a huge hole on one end and a pile of dirt on the other. What should be done to resolve this significant blight in the city? And we start with Nicole Fernandez.
So there are a few things that can be done. I mean, I think that we need to engage our developers to see what it's zoned for. We need to see what proposals developers might have. But in the interim, we're experiencing a funding crisis right now where private developers are having a hard time getting a hold of money. So I think we need to be creative about how we use that block. I will tell you that I am not keenly familiar with this block right now, so I can't picture sort of the makeup of it, but I will tell you that I am open to different ideas. For example, we have a lot of food trucks in North Central that I think we might have like a spot for food trucks to maybe park, or have like a food truck night sponsored by the city where they could leave their food trucks. We could do pop-up art. We could do a kids' day. We could do any number sort of community-oriented things that could put that space to good use until we find a developer who can develop it into something that fits the community character there.
Thank you. And next is Danielle Zwierko-Koditsky.
Yeah, there's a few vacant lots, so I'm not 100% sure about where this one is, but I think the root of this question is really about economic vibrancy and how do we continue to make San Mateo an equitable and engaging place where businesses want to thrive and developers want to build. So again, this is why I think things like Measure T are good, because it promotes housing and growth and development and traffic towards our downtown and to our businesses. And that's, something we did really well during COVID, and we need to continue to foster and nurture going forward into 2024 and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Charles Hanson.
So I wrote down the address because I also am not 100% sure of the vacant space you're speaking of, but I do know that with our budget, as we spoke about the way it is, that we are going to have to get creative. And one thing I was thinking while you were asking the question is we do a lot of like pop-up events on B Street, and what's to say that we can't move some of these events to some of these vacant spaces, long as that they're safe, move those to these vacant spaces and hold some of our pop-up events there until we figure out a way to secure funding and bring in new developments.
Thank you. Next is a bit about governance. How has district as opposed to citywide representation affected City Council's ability to formulate policies and programs? How has district elections versus at-large representation affected City Council's ability to formulate policies and programs? And we'll start with Danielle Zwierko-Koditsky.
Yeah, what a great question. So yes, I will be the representative for District 4, but I have run my campaign as if I'm running across and representing all of San Mateo. And I think that's what good government accountability looks like. And that's one of the tenets of my platform, is making sure that we're, really representing the voice of everyone. When it comes to District 4's history, we too, similar to District 2, have been redlined and are an equity priority area. I'm actually the second person from my district to ever run for city council and be on the city council. So this is a huge moment for our district to find our voice and really be empowered, but ultimately we represent everybody when we're on the dais.
Thank you. Next is Charles Hanson.
So I think the district format is a great step in the right direction, because I think, similar to as Danielle was speaking, it gives every sector, every corner, every person in every district a voice. And if elected, yes, I would be the District 2 electee. However, it's about creating a more inclusive San Mateo where we can agree and we move forward. It's not about my district getting something before another district. It's about moving the city forward together. And as long as we're continuing to do that, I think the district format is an excellent choice.
Thank you. And next is Nicole Fernandez.
So we're still figuring out districts, right? This is only the second election cycle where we've had districts. So there's a lot of things we're working out as a city, but I have seen it work in other communities, and I'm excited to be part of the race for the first District 2 seat. Either Dr. Hanson or I would be the third representative to live in North Central and be elected to the city council, and that's pretty amazing. But I think I'm running as a bridge builder, and I think that it's really important to note that District 2 has very key priorities that we need. And for a very long time, we haven't had a voice or an advocate on council, but we have to prioritize the city's needs. And I'm really lucky in the fact that I have support from all across the city. And I have that support because I will talk to everyone and I will listen to everyone. And I will take that under consideration when I'm on the dais making policy. And I think that that's how you have to operate in districts. People vote for you, but you also have to be representing and thinking about the whole city, all 120,000 residents.
Thank you. Related to districts, how long have you lived in your district as your primary residence? And what has living in your district informed you about your district and the city? So how long have you lived in the district as your primary residence, and what has living in your district informed you about your district and the city? And we'll start with Charles Hanson.
I've recently lived in the district. I moved to the district this year. I was informed about District 2 before I moved to District 2 through the work I do with District 2 and serving the families in the community. That is why I chose to move to District 2, because of the community, because of the rich history. So living in the district has done nothing but solidify that me and my wife made the right move in wanting to raise our son in District 2. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Nicole Fernandez.
Great question. So I have lived when I was able, after I'd saved up for a number of years, when I was able to make my first home purchase after the recession, I was able to purchase in North Central. So I bought my home in 2012 and I've lived there for 12 years. And I think that there's something to be said about having really distinct roots in the community. I was a 2-term commissioner here in the city of San Mateo. I've been an active part of the neighborhood for those 12 years. I've seen it change. I've known my neighbors for a decade, and I've known many city councils in and out through the 12 years that I've worked here, or the 20 years that I've working for a legislative representative who oversees San Mateo. So I've loved that it's changing. I love that it's ever changing, and I love that I get to be a part of the next generation of District 2 in San Mateo.
Thank you. And finally, Danielle Sverko-Kuditsky.
Thank you. So I've lived in San Mateo again for 34 years. I've lived on the east side of 101 for 29 years. What I love about our district is that we're the infrastructure powerhouse of San Mateo. So most people don't realize that the east side of 1 houses our sewage treatment plant, our stormwater plant, our power grid, our transformer grid. It is where the blue collar kind of working class day-to-day folk of San Mateo are. And I'm really proud of that. And I think we need to recognize everybody for their achievements and also for holding up, the banner of infrastructure for the entire city. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next question, our city council politics have been marred by fairly nasty accusations in a sense that the council can't collaborate and cooperate with each other. How will you work toward a civil and collaborative city council? Or as another question asked, how will you get the city council back to the San Mateo way? So the council politics have been marred by some nasty accusations in the sense that the council can't collaborate and cooperate with each other. How will you work towards a civil and collaborative city council and return it to the San Mateo way? And first is Nicole Fernandez.
I've lived in San Mateo long enough to know that we've had many iterations of councils, some that got along, some that got along to get along, and some of them that have just been a nightmare. And our council recently has been so divided that we haven't been able to put the people first. And I'm running to put the people first. I'm very proud of the fact that I am known as someone who is a bridge builder. I'm known as someone who's a consensus builder. And I've done that for the 20 years in my public service career. I'm proud to have the endorsements of 4 of the 5 current council members, along with a dozen other council members, all of whom don't always agree with me and my politics, but they sure know that I'm going to work with them and listen to them. The San Mateo Way is sort of a legendary concept that I don't necessarily know whether it existed, because so many people didn't have a seat at the table. So I don't necessarily know that we need a return to the San Mateo Way, because I think we need more people and diverse voices. But I do think that we can get along better and we can consensus build better than we have been. And I'm running in part to bring that consensus back.
Thank you. And next is Danielle Sverko-Kuditsky.
Yeah, leadership starts at the top. So when you show up and you treat people with respect and you hear them out and you work in a collaborative, consensus building way, that's how results happen. And it's okay to disagree, but you have to be amicable and you have to be nice about it. I'd also like to add, I'm very proud of my campaign, because when there were derogatory slurs and different comments being made on social media, my campaign is the only one that went out there and said that's unacceptable. We also returned campaign funds to residents that we felt were acting out of turn and calling other residents names on social media. And again, to me, that's what leadership is. It's going out and leading and showing people what's okay and what's not okay. And that's how you build consensus and drive collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Charles Hanson.
I couldn't agree more with what these ladies just said. I think you lead by example and you model the way. I think similar, whatever the San Mateo way was, if it's anything like it's been in the past 4 years, I think it needs to be revisited. I think we need more diverse voices, not just at the council table, but also in our commissions. I think the idea, as I think I alluded to earlier, is that we need people that want to move the city forward together. Now, it might not always be unanimous, but it shouldn't be I can't have what I want, so I'm going to stall everything. It should be, how can we keep whatever is best for the city at the forefront and the main thing remain the main thing? Thank you.
Thank you. How will you ensure that the needs of all citizens are represented on the city council, not just those with the loudest voices? How will you ensure that the needs of all citizens are represented on the city council and not just those with the loudest voices? And we'll start with Danielle Swierko-Goditsky.
Yeah, so I was a grassroots field organizer in my 20s. I really believe that you have to take a bottoms-up approach to government and that it's the people's voice that matters the most. So it's doing consistent outreach. One of the things that I've done is over the last 2 years, I've knocked on doors over and over and over again in this city to really make sure I'm championing and hearing everybody's voice and bringing that to the table. It does take outreach and it does take, politicians wanting to be okay answering questions. Hence why I'm here today. I'm running unopposed, but I wanted to hear what's important to San Mateans. And so I chose to do this forum. So thank you.
Thank you. Next is Charles Hanson.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. How would you ensure that the needs of all citizens are represented at the council, not just those with the loudest voices?
Thank you. I think it's continuing in the direction that San Mateo has started. I think we've done a great job of having community outreach events and going into different districts and having information sessions. I think the next step, or another next viable step, would be for, especially in District 2, we have a lot of monolingual speakers. So having some of our informational sessions in their native language, I think would be a nice way to make sure that their voices are being heard too. There's something to be said with a sense of belonging about hearing information in your native language. So I think San Mateo is already taking great steps, and I think we just need to continue in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Nicole Fernandez.
I know that I've beat this horse to death, but I think that it's really incumbent on any elected official to meet and make themselves available to anybody who wants to meet with them. And it's not just residents, it's also the city workers. It's also people who have businesses and employ folks here. We owe everybody who has any sort of investment in the city, and I am willing to talk to anybody and work with anybody. I think that it's really important that we continue to build on the great work that Martin and Martin does in his communications capacity. The city council already did a great job in hiring Alex Kajikian, whose strength is communications and getting out there in the community. We couldn't have a better foundation to build from, and integrating some of Dr. Hanson's comments about meeting people where they are in the language that they speak. I think that's important, but we also need to have more community meetings. We need to be doing it all over. We need to be doing more with the partnerships in the community that already exist and the trusted resources and organizations that already exist.
Thank you. We did get a question from the virtual audience. Thank you, virtual audience on Zoom. What is your plan in partnering with public safety? And I assume they mean the public safety department's personnel. What is your plan in partnering with public safety in San Mateo? And first is Charles Hanson.
So I wouldn't say I've flushed out a full service plan, but I would say not just public safety, but all the major entities for city work. If elected, I would be meeting with them, learning what their priorities are, learning what their needs are, so those can be addressed up here on the dais, and building that collaboration and making sure that we're all moving in the same direction to further the city of San Mateo.
Thank you. And next is Nicole Fernandez.
Great question. Again, I'm proud to be the sole endorsed candidate in my race that has the support of FIRE, the Police Officers Association, and the Safety Management Association, which is the lieutenants and sergeants of San Mateo PD. So they've already interfaced with me and believe that I'm the best person for this job, and that I know public safety. I also spent 5 years working for Adult Protective Services alongside law enforcement and public safety officials on issues around elder welfare. And I think I'm the only person up here who has worked with law enforcement on that. So I already have a keen understanding. I want to make myself available to those workers. One of our big problems is that we can't retain them and keep them here. And I think that we need to really do more in terms of making this a viable place, a good place to want to work. We can help with down payment assistance to bring more of those public safety officers to work and stay here in San Mateo. But we also need to make ourselves available. I know Danielle made herself available to the public works folks and brought them donuts after a big flood a few months ago. And I'd like to make myself available to the roll call meetings and police and fire as well.
Thank you. What is one program you would
I didn't get to.
see, I did it again.
It's okay.
Sorry. Finally, Danielle Sverko-Kodzicki.
So on public safety, so I too am endorsed by local PD and fire, and I'm actually on the neighborhood watch board. And there's some incredible programs that exist within San Mateo. Like we have a mental health and wellness crisis team that responds to those that maybe are struggling or need additional support. That ties into public safety. Again, working with our public works department closely to understand where we need to invest, whether that's roads, transportation, thinking about things like flooding or future disaster relief. We also have programs like CERT. So there's a lot of avenues to really look at and evaluate around where we can keep investing in public safety. And I don't think it's a one size fits all solution. It really is ingrained and embedded in everything that is done across San Mateo. So thank you.
Thank you. I usually only do that once a forum, darn it. All right, next question. What is one program you would introduce that San Mateo currently doesn't have? What is a program you would like to introduce that San Mateo currently doesn't have? And we'll start with Nicole.
An issue that you would not think is a big one, but is actually a big one in District 2 is food trucks, where they have become a bit of an issue for the neighbors in terms of people having in-home restaurants out of their garages, maybe unlicensed, and then food trucks that are parked, taking up bike lane space or parking spaces, and just being a general, sometimes a nuisance to some of the neighbors. I know our PD receives a lot of those, so I would like to do a program for our PD around education about what they can ticket versus what they can't ticket. I would also like for us to integrate into the city, doing more around entrepreneurial work, partnership with like Job Train or the Renaissance Center, to help these small business owners who have the food trucks or in their in-home kitchens to perhaps start a business in one of the industrial kitchens, or to work in partnership with others, or to have a central place for the food trucks in our city, so that they can continue doing their small businesses but not have them in the neighborhoods.
Thank you. And next is Danielle Sverko-Kodzicki.
So one of the programs that I've been working on with the city of San Mateo and with residents is the Orange Flag Brigade. So this is a small change actually, where students crossing the street in order to enhance visibility and lower risks of accidents by vehicle or even bicycle collision could pick up a flag and use that to help them cross the street on the way to and from school. So that's a real-time program that I'm trying to get launched across San Mateo. We do have some school support. We're still working working through some of the legalities around how that would actually work. I think that, another thing, just going back to safety. So we do have an incredible CERT program, but there's other programs that we need for emergency response, for example, like ham radio volunteers. So I'd love to kind of invest in some of that low hanging fruit and get that stuff launched that protects us all, in a natural disaster. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Charles Hanson.
A program I would like to see in collaboration with the city is a workforce program. And what I mean by the workforce program is having internships available, especially for public works and city works, where high school graduates, they work with local nonprofits. I happen to know one. They work with local nonprofits and they get the training that they need, and then they're promised internships at the city level so that they can start their careers at the city level, and they are assured jobs. And I think it helps increase the pipeline and the workforce development of the city of San Mateo, and filling gaps that those kids otherwise wouldn't have post-secondary education wise.
Thank you. The next question is about your priorities, and I like how this person frames it. What is your signature issue? If you had a magic wand and you had 100% chance of success to change a city policy, regulation, land use plan, or spending priority, what would you do and how would you do it? I'll give you a second to think about it and repeat it. What is your signature issue? If you knew you had a magic wand and 100% chance of success to change a city policy, regulation, land use plan, or spending priority, what would you do and how would you do it? And we'll start with Danielle Sverko-Koditsky.
Yeah, I think this won't be a surprise for anyone. Dredging the lagoon. That would definitely be high on my list. But I think just in general, climate resilient infrastructure and looking at modes around, how we can make sure that the city is really fortified for the future. Even things like, we're one of the only cities that really hasn't invested in vulnerability studies around building a levee. So I just think, we really need to get serious about climate transition because it's here. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Charles Hanson.
So I would wave a magic wand for housing, because if it's a magic wand, that means everyone would have the housing that they need. And the reason why I would say housing is because I don't look at housing in a silo. I think housing directly affects a lot of the other things when we talk about infrastructure, when we talk about traffic, when we talk about parking. And also, I think that goes a long way when talking with first responders and listening to how far some of them have to commute. I would love for our first responders, for our teacher workforce, basically for everyone that works in San Mateo, to be able to afford to live in San Mateo. So that's what I would use. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Nicole Fernandez.
Sorry, short people problems. So my signature issue would be traffic safety and infrastructure. Like I mentioned before, North Central is the most dangerous neighborhood for pedestrians and bicyclists. North Shoreview has its own traffic issues because it's so narrow. So if I could wave a magic wand, I would not only have an up-to-date traffic plan for both of those neighborhoods, but we would immediately be putting things in, such as, because North Shoreview and North Central both haven't had a whole lot of infrastructure updates in the last few years, but I would be putting in speed bumps, and I would be putting in more stop signs, increased street lighting, just so that accidents like Ms. VR, who passed away last month, we don't have more Ms. VRs we can't afford to lose members of our community like that. Families can't afford to do that. Our residents deserve better, and we should be doing more around traffic infrastructure and safety.
All right, thank you. Wow, we've been through a lot of questions. So we'll start to wind down with the last two. This question asker would like to hear a quick story about the city of San Mateo that inspires you. What is a story about the city of San Mateo that inspires you? It could be to inspire you to run or just inspires you. And first is Charles Hanson.
I think, the story that would inspire me would be the story that I'm going to get to tell my son about the last 8 months. Just me being in a position where I have the opportunity to run for city council. I'm very blessed and fortunate where a lot of the families that I've spoken with gave me a crash course of the history of District 2, and I look forward to the opportunity to tell my son some of those same stories. So I think that is what inspires me, is him, and being able to tell him of the rich history of District 2 and the journey that he was a part of these past 8 months.
Thank you. And next is Nicole Fernandez.
I think the most important story in my life about being in San Mateo is the fact that my story is a San Mateo story. I was born at the former Mills Hospital in North Central in District 2. My parents chose to rent their first home in America in District 2. I grew up in Belmont, and so San Mateo and San Mateo County really made me who I am today. I've been blessed to be friends or work with many city council members and get to know some amazing parts of San Mateo. And my formative years were spent here at Central Park and at different places up and down the peninsula. And I think I'm running today because I owe it back to my community, because it's given me so much. And so that's my story. My American story is a San Mateo story.
Thank you. And finally, Danielle Zverko-Koditsky.
I may not get the story 100% right, but I do think it speaks to the openness and uniqueness of San Mateo, and when people say we're the heart of the peninsula. So during and after the Vietnam War, San Mateo was one of the only cities in America that actually recognized and supported the veterans that served. It's the Screaming Eagles adoption, I believe is what it's called. Thank you, Martin, for nodding. And I'm really proud of that because it speaks to our community and the heart of our community. And what I love so much about having grown up here is that we're welcoming, we're inclusive, and we see everyone for who they are, and we accept them for that.
Thank you. And finally, you each bring some unique skills to the city council if you're elected. What are your unique skills that you'll bring? Or in other words, like I like to ask it, what's your superpower? What's your unique skills? What are some of your unique skills that you will bring to this job? And we will start with Nicole Fernandez.
I would say my super skill is relationship building and connecting. I am very proud to say that I can get along with pretty much anybody and talk to anybody when it comes, whether we differ or not. I have people who don't even like my politics who have endorsed and supported me. I'm really proud, again, to have the endorsements of four sitting council members and 3 who I would serve with if I'm elected to District 2. I'm also really I can also really get down at karaoke and dancing. And I know that Mayor Nash and Councilmember Lorraine would be on the dance floor with me, and maybe we could get Deputy Mayor Newsom to join me. But I know that we'd be a really strong council because we'd all talk to each other. And Danielle's one of my best friends, so I know we'd get along as well.
Thank you. And next is Danielle Zverko-Koditsky.
I'm not perfect. There's a lot of things I don't know, but what I will tell you is I work really hard and I listen to everybody. And there is nobody that's going to work harder for you to represent you than I am. And I promise you on that. And I think I've proved that time and time again. Restarted our neighborhood association that didn't exist, got us over 200 residents to come down to City Hall to petition the city for emergency relief funds, which really has never happened outside of COVID-19. Fought for passage of the stormwater measure, fighting for Measure T, and I'll continue to fight for the community. So thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Charles Hanson.
I think one of my superpowers would be my leadership style, which is transformative. I've been very fortunate where, as I mentioned earlier, my professional job in nonprofit, I've had the opportunity to revitalize a lot of neighborhoods and bring programs and infrastructure and build playgrounds within those communities. And I think, as I alluded to earlier, I'm able to collaborate because I've worked with state, county, and federal entities in bringing programs to neighborhoods. And I think the biggest thing is that I'm always able to keep perspective of what's important to the community, because if elected, yes, it'll be my name up here, but I'm just a conduit to all the voices in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it's time for closing statements. And while the candidates gather their thoughts, because they've been busy up there, I will mention to the audience here and virtually that all the candidates have about our website about the candidates is vote411.org. All the candidates have been invited to enter their information and link to their own websites there. The league works diligently to obtain candidate responses so that you can hear from them in their own words. And we have some bookmarks in the back with that URL to remind you. So grab one on your way out. So with that, it's time for closing statements. I will reverse the order from that of the opening statements. So our first closing statement is Nicole Fernandez.
I feel like I've said everything, so cool. Again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this panel. We've been through we've been through quite a few of these, and it's always a thrill to be on the dais with these two, or to be on a panel with these two. San Mateo is really lucky for the caliber of candidates we have. I just want to say that I am born and raised in this community in the Greater Peninsula area. No one knows this area more intimately at the city level, at the county level, at the state level, and at the federal level. And I will be able to represent you, and I will be able to do the work starting on day one. I am a person who listens. I'm a person who keeps an open mind, and I am a person who builds bridges. And I think our city council really needs that. And I think a District 2 representative really needs to embody those qualities. I really hope that I've been able to earn your vote tonight if you're here in the audience or if you're on Zoom. But if I haven't, I just want to thank you for considering me, and just make sure that you turn in your ballot and vote. This process, this small d democratic process, doesn't vote unless you stay involved and you vote. So please remember to vote, and don't forget to give to the League of Women Voters, because all of this doesn't happen for free. And so just make sure that you remember thank them for facilitating this, and just remember that it takes volunteers to put things like this on. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. Next is Danielle Spirko-Kodzicki.
I'll just keep it short and sweet. I do want to say thank you guys for putting this forum on tonight, and thank you to everyone in the audience who attended. My platform, again, is around community engagement and empowerment, infrastructure and public safety, and community-oriented development. And I'm running unopposed, so it's really simple. You just got to fill in the circle. And thank you so much.
Thank you. And finally, Charles Hanson.
I would like to thank everyone in the virtual audience, everyone here in person, the League of Women Volunteers, for putting this together. I appreciate you two once again for being on the panel with me. I'm running for city council because I believe San Mateo deserves bold, independent leadership, and I would challenge Daniela on that, who would work the hardest, because I'm ready to work tirelessly to ensure that District 2 remains a place where families like mine can build a future and thrive and grow. And I just think together we can shape San Mateo. A San Mateo that leads with integrity, equity, and a collaborative vision. Thank you all, and have a good evening.
Thank you. And thank you for the kind words about the leagues. I love doing candidate forums. I'm our leader for our league in candidate forums, because I just think you always learn something about the city, and I just find them fascinating. So thank you. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization, and membership is open to all people ages 16 and up. If you are interested in helping your community with forums such as this or other activities that encourage civic education and involvement, brochures are available in the back with information about joining the league. We also have some copies of the ballot proposition pros and cons if you want to grab one of those and study up on your ballot propositions. Remember to vote on or by November 5th, and encourage others to vote as well. Ballots just went out this week. October 21st is the last day to register and get a non-provisional ballot, but note you can register and vote up until and through on election day, but you will submit a provisional ballot. And finally, it's a brave and hard job to run for office, so please join me in applauding and thanking the candidates for coming and speaking to us this evening for San Mateo City Council.